Hello friends, how are you? Shall we start our class today? So let's go. The soft hum of violins filled the grand hall as sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the marble floors. Lara stood in front of the mirror in her dressing room, taking a deep breath to steady the excitement coursing through her veins. She adjusted her veil carefully, her hands trembling with a mix of nerves and joy. Today was the day she would become Mrs. Steve Connolly, a day she had dreamed of since their whirlwind romance began. Her best friend, Emma, bustled about, fluffing the train of Lara's gown. "You look stunning," Emma said, smiling warmly. "Steve won't be able to take his eyes off you." Lara laughed softly, her voice tinged with anticipation. "I just hope everything goes smoothly. He means the world to me, Emma." As the music swelled in the main hall, signaling the start of the ceremony, Lara gathered her courage and stepped out of the dressing room. The aisle stretched before her, lined with white roses and filled with the faces of friends and family. At the altar, Steve stood in his sharp black tuxedo, his expression unreadable. Ashley, his colleague and close friend, sat in the front pew, her eyes fixed on him. As Lara began her walk down the aisle, her heart raced, each step bringing her closer to the man she believed was her forever. But as she approached, Steve's gaze shifted, and a flicker of unease passed over his face. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder as he suddenly stepped away from the altar. "Lara," he began, his voice shaking, "I can't do this." The words felt like a dagger to her heart. Her bouquet slipped from her trembling hands, petals scattering across the floor. The gasps of the guests were a distant murmur as Lara stared at Steve in disbelief. "What are you saying, Steve?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry," he said, his eyes darting toward Ashley. I'm in love with someone else." Lara's knees threatened to buckle as the weight of his confession crushed her. "Ashley," she managed to ask, her voice laced with betrayal and anguish. Ashley rose from her seat, her expression unapologetic. "Steve and I have been seeing each other for a while," she said, her tone cold and unyielding. Tears streamed down Lara's face as the realization sank in. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, yet it was unraveling into a nightmare. The guests whispered and exchanged shocked glances, but Lara could barely process their presence. "Why now, Steve?" Lara cried, her voice breaking. "Why humiliate me like this? Why not tell me before all of this?" Steve averted his gaze, guilt written across his face. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could go through with it, but I can't live a lie." Emma rushed to Lara's side, wrapping a protective arm around her. "You're a coward," Emma spat at Steve, her eyes blazing with anger. "You don't deserve her." Lara's chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath. She turned to Steve one last time, her voice steadier than she felt. "I loved you, Steve. I would have given you everything. But now I want nothing from you." She walked back down the aisle, her head held high despite the storm raging inside her. The crowd parted, their eyes heavy with pity. As Lara reached the exit, she cast one final glance over her shoulder. Steve and Ashley stood together at the altar, their connection undeniable. Outside, the cool breeze kissed her tear-streaked face. The weight of betrayal pressed down on her, but amidst the pain, a flicker of resolve ignited. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a new chapter she never expected to write. The once vibrant walls of Lara's apartment seemed to shrink around her, now only shadows of the life she had imagined with Steve. Days turned into weeks, each one dragging her deeper into despair. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional ring of her phone, calls she never answered. Emma had been her lifeline, checking in daily, urging her to get out of the apartment, but Laura refused. It was easier to hide away than to face the world and its pitying gazes. Her heart was heavy, like lead, each beat a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered her. One morning, Laura woke with an unusual heaviness in her body, her stomach twisting and nausea overtaking her. She stumbled to the bathroom, clutching the sink as her reflection stared back at her. Pale and fragile. The physical sensations were unfamiliar, and alarm bells began to ring in her mind. Emma arrived that afternoon, as she always did, bearing soup and sympathy. Laura tried to brush off her discomfort, but Emma wasn't one to be fooled. "You've looked pale all week, Laura," Emma said, placing a hand on Lara's forehead. "Have you thought about seeing a doctor?" Laura shook her head. I haven't felt like doing anything, Emma. Maybe it's just stress." Emma tilted her head thoughtfully, her brow furrowing. "Stress doesn't usually come with nausea. Could it be something else?" "Laura," Emma hesitated before continuing, "could you be pregnant?" The question hung in the air like a thundercloud. Lara's breath caught, and her mind began racing. She thought back, piecing together the fragmented memories of the last few months. The timing, the signs. Could it be? The answer was swift and terrifying. Later that evening, Laura sat on the edge of her bed, a pregnancy test clutched tightly in her hand. Her heart pounded as she stared at the two unmistakable lines. Pregnant. Steve's child. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, a mix of emotions swirling in her chest, fear, anger, and a quiet flicker of hope. Emma was the first to know, sitting beside Laura as she tried to process what this would mean. "You don't have to tell him," Emma said firmly. "Steve doesn't deserve to know after what he did to you." Lara's voice trembled as she replied, "But Emma, this child deserves to know its father. I don't want to take that away, no matter how much he hurt me." The debate raged between the two friends, each side arguing for a future that felt equally uncertain. Laura knew she was about to walk a difficult path, one that could shatter her even further. But her resolve began to grow, fueled by the tiny life within her. The next morning, Laura sat alone in her kitchen, staring at the number she knew by heart. Her fingers hovered over the phone, hesitating before she finally pressed dial. It rang once, twice, and then his voice came through, calm, collected, as though nothing had happened. "Lara." Steve's voice was laced with surprise. "I didn't expect to hear from you." I need to talk to you," Lara said, her voice steady despite the nerves threatening to overwhelm her. "It's important." A brief pause. "All right," Steve said cautiously. "Where?" Lara gave him a time and place, and as she hung up, her hands trembled. The wheels were set in motion, and there was no turning back now. The coffee shop buzzed with soft chatter, clinking cups, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. It was a place Lara once loved, but today the warmth of its ambience did little to soothe the storm inside her. She sat at a corner table, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her gaze flickered to the door every few seconds, her heartbeat quickening with each unfamiliar face that walked in. When Steve finally arrived, his presence seemed to suck the air from the room. Dressed casually in jeans and a fitted jacket, he looked the same and yet entirely different. To Lara, he was no longer the man she had loved, but a stranger tied to her by a thread she could not sever. "Lara," Steve greeted hesitantly as he approached the table. His eyes scanned her face, searching for clues about why she had called. "You look well." Laura offered no response, gesturing instead for him to sit. For a moment, the silence between them was palpable, stretching across the table like an invisible barrier. It was Steve who finally broke it. "So, what's this about?" he asked, his tone cautiously neutral. Laura took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice softer than she intended. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup as she mustered the courage to continue. "I'm pregnant, Steve. It's your child." His reaction was immediate. A flicker of shock crossed his face, followed by a jumble of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. He leaned back in his chair, his hands running through his hair as he processed the revelation. "Pregnant," he repeated, almost as if the word were foreign to him. "You're sure?" Lara's lips tightened, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "Yes, I'm sure," she replied, her tone firmer now. "I didn't ask for this, Steve. I didn't plan for it. But it's happening, and you deserve to know." Steve leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table as his gaze locked onto hers. "Lara, I don't even know what to say. This is a lot." "You think it's not a lot for me?" Lara snapped, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. She took a calming breath, her hands trembling as she placed them in her lap. "I'm not here to ask anything of you, Steve. I don't expect you to come running back or play the role of a perfect father. But I'm keeping this baby, and you need to decide what that means for you." The gravity of her words hung between them, heavy and unyielding. Steve's brow furrowed as he leaned back again, his eyes drifting toward the window. "Does Ashley know?" he asked finally. "No," Lara said sharply. "And that's your problem to deal with, not mine." Steve nodded slowly, his mind clearly racing with thoughts he wasn't ready to share. The mention of Ashley seemed to snap him back to the reality of his situation, and a flicker of guilt passed over his face. I can't make any promises right now, Lara," he said, his voice low. "I need time to figure this out." Lara's jaw tightened, a mix of disappointment and resignation settling in her chest. She had expected as much. Steve had always been indecisive, avoiding confrontation until it could no longer be ignored. But this time she wouldn't let his uncertainty dictate her life. "Take all the time you want, Steve," she said, rising from her seat. She grabbed her coat and slung it over her arm, her gaze steady and unwavering. "But understand this, whether or not you're involved, I'm moving forward. This child deserves stability, love, and a parent who's willing to fight for them. I won't let you or anyone else take that away." Steve watched her, a mixture of regret and confusion etched on his face. As Lara walked away, she felt a strange sense of closure. The weight of his betrayal still lingered, but her resolve burned brighter now, fueled by the life growing inside her. The grandeur of the venue matched the opulence of the moment. Rows of meticulously arranged chairs surrounded an aisle adorned with cascading white orchids. Ashley had spared no expense for her wedding day, as if she intended to make a statement, declaring to the world and perhaps to Lara that she had won. Steve stood at the altar, his expression tense beneath the mask of his tailored suit. Uninvited but resolute, Lara entered the ceremony. The whispers began instantly, rippling through the crowd like a slow-burning fuse. Lara ignored them, her eyes fixed on Steve, who now looked as though he'd seen a ghost. Ashley's piercing gaze landed on Lara, narrowing with irritation. "What is she doing here?" she hissed at Steve under her breath. Lara walked boldly down the aisle, every step deliberate. The murmur in the room ceased as Lara spoke, her voice steady and loud enough for all to hear. "Steve, I need to talk to you now." Ashley stepped forward, her expression turning venomous. "You're not welcome here, Lara. Whatever you think this is, it's pathetic." Lara met Ashley's cold glare with unwavering defiance. "I'm here for Steve. And I'm not leaving until he hears what I have to say." Steve hesitated, caught between the two women. The tension in the room thickened until Ashley finally snarled, "Fine. Say whatever it is and leave." Taking a deep breath, Lara turned to Steve, her voice full of emotion. "Steve, you need to know that Ashley's been manipulating you. She's not the person you think she is." Ashley's laugh was sharp, almost theatrical. "Manipulating? That's rich coming from you." But Steve's brows furrowed as he looked at Ashley, his doubt finally surfacing. Lara pressed on, knowing this was her moment. "Do you remember when she convinced you to leave me? How she said it was for love? Steve, she wanted you not because of who you are, but because of what she could gain. She's selfish, and she's using you to build the perfect image for herself." Ashley's face flushed with anger. "That's a lie." Before Steve could respond, Lara's words struck a chord. He stepped back, turning to Ashley. "Is this true?" His voice shook with unease. Ashley faltered for a moment, her defenses cracking. But then her mask slipped completely and she sneered. "What does it matter, Steve? I got what I wanted, didn't I? You were willing to leave her for me, and now you're mine." The room froze as Ashley's unapologetic admission echoed through the hall. Steve's expression hardened, betrayal dawning in his eyes. "You lied to me, manipulated me, and you never cared about anyone but yourself." Ashley attempted to regain control. "You wouldn't have left her if you didn't love me. Don't pretend like this is just my fault, Steve." But Steve shook his head, stepping away from her. "Maybe I was blind, but you made sure of that. And now I see the truth." Lara watched the scene unfold, a mixture of relief and sorrow washing over her. Steve turned to her, his voice quieter now. "I made a terrible mistake, Lara. I should have never hurt you." The words hung in the air, but Lara knew her response would define her future. "You can't undo what's been done, Steve. This isn't about us anymore. It's about the choices we make moving forward." Ashley stormed past them both, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she exited the ceremony, leaving behind a stunned audience and an unfinished wedding. Lara stood by the window of her apartment, watching the city's lights twinkle against the evening sky. The weight of the past weeks still lingered, but there was a new calm in her heart, a fragile but growing sense of peace. She placed a hand gently on her stomach, the connection to the life growing within her stronger with each passing day. The doorbell rang, breaking her reverie. She hesitated for a moment, instinctively knowing who it was. As she opened the door, Steve stood before her, his face a mixture of weariness and regret. "Lara," he began, his voice soft, "I needed to see you. I owe you an apology, more than that, really." She stepped aside to let him in, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Steve glanced around the apartment, taking in the signs of Lara's independent journey, books stacked on the coffee table, baby catalogs on the counter. "I've spent a lot of time thinking," Steve continued, his hands clenching nervously, "about everything. What I did to you, what I let happen. I was blind and I let Ashley manipulate me. I lost sight of what really mattered." Lara crossed her arms, her gaze steady but cautious. "And now you think you can just walk in here and fix it all?" Steve shook his head. "No. I know I can't undo what I did and I don't expect forgiveness. But I want to be a part of our child's life, Lara. I want to make things right as much as I can." For a moment, Lara remained silent, weighing his words. She had spent so much time rebuilding herself, her confidence, her sense of purpose. Letting Steve back into her world even partially felt like a risk. But she knew this decision wasn't just hers to make. "This isn't about me and you anymore, Steve," she said finally. "It's about this child. I won't deny them the chance to know their father. But if you want to be part of their life, you have to show me that you're capable of responsibility, consistency. I need to know you mean it." Steve nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be there for them, and for you, if you'll let me." Lara shook her head softly. "We can't go back, Steve. Not after everything. But maybe we can move forward as co-parents. For their sake." A sense of closure began to settle as the two talked, discussing plans for the future and what their shared commitment to the child would look like. For the first time, Lara felt a sense of control over her destiny, the power to shape her own path. Months later, Lara found herself in a new chapter of life. Her baby bump had grown, and so had her confidence. She had embraced the support of her friends and family, and even Steve had started to show up, proving himself little by little. They weren't a couple, but they were partners in a shared purpose, their child's happiness. One sunny afternoon, Lara sat in the park, watching children play and feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. Emma joined her, carrying 2 cups of iced tea. "You seem happier," Emma remarked with a smile. Lara nodded, her own smile faint but genuine. "I didn't think I'd ever get here, Emma. But I've found something I didn't expect, hope." Emma squeezed her hand affectionately. "You're stronger than you know, Lara. And that little one is lucky to have you." As Lara gazed into the distance, she felt the stirrings of a future filled with promise. She didn't need validation from Steve, Ashley, or anyone else. She had built a life rooted in resilience and love, a new beginning for both herself and her child. It's great to see you here. Tell me in the comments what you thought of the story and what level of difficulty it was for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss new stories, and like if you liked it. I'll see you next time. Bye.